give you a little bit of a background around the strengths movement and where it came from and what the purpose of it is. In the early 80s, an educational psychologist by the name of Dr. Donald Clifton started to ask a different question. And the question that he started to ask was, what would happen if we started to focus on what was right with people rather than what was wrong with people? Back then, the main focus, particularly in psychology, but probably in society in general, was always focused on what was wrong with you. And so the approach was looking at what are the things, your weaknesses, what are the things you need to fix, all the negative stuff. And let's work at fixing those areas, fixing those weaknesses. He believed that when you really focus on what's right with you, a lot of the negative stuff falls away. So, over a period of more than 30 years, along with a team, they identified and interviewed more than 2.5 million standout people. People that really stood head and shoulders above everyone else in their particular field. And they interviewed them by asking them open-ended questions. They wanted to try and understand if there was something that all these people had in common and that was different from everyone else. Well, they found two things. The first thing that they found was that every single one of these people knew very clearly and specifically what their natural strengths were. Not a learned ability. You can learn to do something. It doesn't mean that's a natural strength. These people knew what came naturally to them and what energized them. The second thing that was different with all of them was that they were doing the exact opposite to everyone else. They would spend the majority of their time, effort, and energy focusing on building their strengths rather than trying to fix weaknesses. Now, they knew what their weaknesses were. They were perhaps just as clear around where their weaknesses were. But their focus wasn't to try and fix the weaknesses. Their focus was to look at strategies to manage around the weaknesses so that they could spend more time and energy building their strengths. If you invest time and energy into a weakness, let's say let me give you an example. Let's say I offered you an opportunity to invest in investment A or investment B. And I said to you, investment A and investment B have the same amount of risk and you're going to have to invest the same amount of money into them. The only difference is if you invest in investment A, you're going to get a 20% return on your investment. If you invest in investment B, you're only going to get a 2% return. Which one are you going to choose? Well, it's a pretty obvious answer, I think. And yet, what amazes me is how often we as human beings choose the investment B. We choose to invest our time, energy, and effort into fixing our weaknesses at the expense of building strengths. And so your return on investment when you invest your time, energy, and effort into building your strengths is far superior than if you invested into fixing your weaknesses. The goal of the strengths movement is to create a common language, and that was the vision of Dr. Donald Clifton. He believed that until we have a common language to talk about what's right with people, we'll be missing each other. Because I might be using certain language to talk about what I'm good at, you using different language, and we sometimes might be talking about the same thing. But because we're not using the same language, we're kind of missing each other. And so that was the first thing, is have this common language. Not only so that we can talk the same language, but also so that we get a much more clear and specific understanding of where we're naturally strong. Once you understand where you're naturally strong, the goal is to maximize those strengths and to look at strategies to manage around your weaknesses. Now you can imagine, after interviewing all these people, you would find that there were several people at times talking about the same thing, even though they were describing it differently. And so because of that, what started to happen was these patterns started to emerge. And Donald Clifton and his team started to really clarify those patterns. They narrowed them down to the most common patterns, and they came to a list of 34. And they define these 34 patterns as talent, natural talents. And natural talents, to be a little bit more specific, are patterns of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be applied productively. And every single one of us has our own unique mix of these talents. Your job is to start becoming more aware of where those are with my help and with the help of the Strengths Explorer assessment, so that you can focus on building those talents into strengths. And that's the whole goal of strengths-based psychology, or the strengths movement. When you get to use what you're naturally strong at in what you do, you're so much more motivated, so much more engaged. And when you're engaged, you're more creative, you're more productive.